Great to be here. I have a hard time believing that at 9 a.m. on a Sunday, all of you are here. Let's make sure all of you are awake, just so I also get a feel for the audience. Let's do a show of hands. How many of you are engineers? Okay, that's like 2/3. How about, do we have product managers here? Some, not that many. How about UX design folks? That's quite a few. So primarily engineers. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's great to be here. And perhaps more of what I say, will relate to the audience because, like you, I'm an engineer. I'm proud of being an engineer. I should start out, though, by saying that I'm not an academic in the field of career management. I've not studied hundreds and thousands of careers and written books and done PhD and so on. So what I'm going to tell you today is a set of observations and anecdotes that I've formed over the years. And these are necessarily personal, and you should make sure that you always have a critical ear to what you're hearing because your mileage in all of this might vary. It's important to be critical in things that we do. And roughly the way I structured my talk today is in terms of a series of observations around different stages of an engineer's career. Different stages, really, of somebody in tech. How should they think about growth? How should they think about progress? What are things to watch out for? And I hope you'll find that useful. I'll start out with the first thing, which is what should you work on? I realize that many of you have made choices. You've already sort of embarked on a career. But I've switched careers around a few times in my life. As I said, I used to be an academic. I worked for Bell Labs. I did research. I sort of went into more software engineering after that. Switched away from that. I love software engineering, but I clearly don't do much of that. But I do think it's really important for all of you to think about how do you want to be spending your time. I have kids now who are 16 and 18. One is a freshman in college. The other one's a junior. And so we have discussions like this. And I've come to the conclusion that the best way for you to judge what you should do is think about whether the thing that you want to do engrosses you so much that you'll gladly stay up the whole night or get up super early in the morning to actually do. I discovered along the way that video games could do this for me. Okay, it's just I didn't even need to eat or go to the bathroom. But I decided after a while that was not such a smart move for my career. So, outside of that, generally working on things that people value, what are you passionate about? And the reason I say that is because in this day and age, all of us spend way too much time working to be not passionate about it. There are thumb rules and studies out there that basically say something to the effect of, if you truly want to be an expert at something, you need to spend on the order of 10,000 hours at it to become an expert. That's a lot of time. 10 hours a day, still you're talking 3+ years to get at it. So if you're not passionate about what you're doing, it's hard to gain deep, deep expertise. And that is something I continue to tell as a core piece of career advice to every single person. I discovered when I was doing software engineering, for example, time stopped. I could stay up the whole night doing it. I loved creating something from nothing. And so you need to make sure that the area that you pick, the kind of work that you do, drives that kind of deep passion from within you. And let's say you got lucky, like some of us. You have the deep expertise. You do something that you love. What does growth mean at that point? I always encourage people to get the big picture of what their team is accomplishing, to not be confined in how they approach work. You need the deep expertise, but that shouldn't stop you from knowing what's going on around you. Even at Google, for example, I find that too many people will decide that they are a back-end person. And that's all they want to do. They look down on everything that everybody else does. Product like, who cares? This is UX engineer. That can't be that hard, can it? That's a bad attitude to have. It's important that you have a degree of breadth in what you do, because you need to create products that your consumers, your customers love. And while it's not possible to be a deep expert in everything that goes on, it is important to understand what is it that that you need to create a full product. What does product management mean for this product? What does great UX design mean? What apps have brilliant motion design versus not? You might not be able to create it, but you should at least be able to understand what drives excellence. And there are new areas coming up all the time that I think it's important for all of us to know more about. Growth is a hot topic. And it's very clear that there is a science that's being born there. I think it's important for a good engineer, for a good product manager, to really understand everything that goes into creating great products. And let's now take one step further. You have an idea what's going on within your team. You are a great designer or product manager or engineer. What does growth mean? A lot of us, for example, aspire to be tech leads or managers. And to get to something like that, you sort of need to get to a place where you're curious about what's going on in the areas around you. And this is where the breadth helps. The more you know about what your immediate group is accomplishing or where it needs to go, the more opportunities that you end up having. The more supportive you are of the people around you, the more you can be seen as a leader. This is not to say that you should be spending all your time helping others. You need to still be spending the majority of your time in what you're being paid to do, in your work. But it's important to understand the context and be helpful around. And another firm piece of advice that I have for lots of people is being unhappy with the job or team that you do is not a recipe for promotion. I'll often have people that will come to me and say, my job's kind of easy, I'm kind of bored, I can do more. But who wants to promote unhappy people? Or give them bigger responsibility? It doesn't work like that. So being really absorbed in the core of what your team does, believing in it, driving it forward, is an essential recipe for getting more responsibility. The more it is seen that you actually care about the team, the more it is seen that you're taking the team forward, the more likely it is that your manager is going to say, aha, so-and-so person should take on more responsibility. It's important for us to remember that. If you're unhappy in your job, I'm not saying you should continue. You might be ripe for a change. But changes are typically lateral moves. They don't come with promotion. As I said, change is something that you should contemplate. But if you want to move forward, you need to be at a place where, at its core, you're in a happy place. Let's now switch gears and talk about what it is to be a manager. I can assure you, this is one of the scariest things that all of us go through. For the first time in our life, we move from being in a situation where we make a difference to our careers to being entirely dependent on other people. In fact, one of the things I tell people is having an attitude or being the smartest person in the room is a disqualification almost for being the manager of a team. Because those kind of managers have a lot of attitude. They don't bring out the best in the teams. As a manager, it's really important for you to understand that you are now about enabling people. You succeed when the people in your team succeed. It's a very different mentality. It is all about how are you going to create opportunity for other people? How are you going to bring out the best in them? How are you going to make the people in your team grow? And how are you going to be an active advocate for them? And as you become a more senior manager, you get into even scarier topics. People come to you and say, you should help me grow my career. My first reaction to that is, say what? I have not planned my career. I barely have a clue about what I'm going to do next month. You want me to help you. But you have to learn along the way. You have to think about not just what is this person capable of today, what are they capable of 2 years from now? Even if you didn't plan your own career, you need to think forward and say, where is my group going to be 2 years from now? What is this person capable of? What are their strengths and weaknesses? What can I tell them about where they can grow? Perhaps they need to be a more effective communicator. Perhaps they need to work better with other people within the team. All of a sudden, as a senior manager, you're a judge of other people. And your success depends very much on the few bets that you get to make, whether it's product direction or it's people. So thinking hard about the qualities that you want ends up making a huge difference. And I'll tell you the 2 qualities that I look for whenever I think about giving responsibility to people. I look for motivation, for drive. And I look very hard for a willingness to learn. All of you know this. By the time you're 25 and 30, you've learned a lot, but you often discover that finding the time and the mentality to go learn something brand new becomes really hard for people. You need a special kind of motivation. And it is at least my observation that that kind of drive and motivation to want to keep learning, to want to get better at things is hard. And that's a quality that I really, really look for, and lots of people I know look for when it comes to who should be given more opportunity. And the kind of learning that you have to go through can be excessively awkward. I can assure you, for example, giving public speeches, not my thing. I was very bad at this. But you're fortunate. You can get help from great people. I still remember this one time when I did a 90-second snippet in front of a speech coach, and then he wrote feedback for me that took 15 minutes to read on all the things I could be doing better. It's incredibly humbling. But it's an important part of growing and being a leader. If you want to lead a team with several hundred people in it, speaking, motivating is an essential aspect of being that leader. You don't get to duck it. You see people do this. They'll come up and they're not able to put ideas together. It actually gets in their way of being an effective leader. I'm not saying public speaking is the only thing that there is. There are many different qualities. My point is leadership takes different things at different times. And it is important to have the drive to want to learn and the willingness to invest time and effort to actually go and learn. I kind of want to touch on 2 things that we don't really talk about a whole lot when it comes to management, or really being part of an enterprise. The first one is how to be a good peer. You often work in groups of people. As I said earlier, really focusing on goals that the team has is very important, and really driving that forward. And having a sense of balance between the work that you do and the work that other teams do is very important for representing your team. You see some managers who are incredibly aggressive about always advocating for the easiest thing for their team. They're not doing right by the larger effort that they're a part of, their company. You also see managers that routinely sign up their teams for lots of work, and their teams hate them. You don't want to be in either place. You need a sense of balance to how you think about how you work with other teams. And by the way, one of the biggest mistakes, if you're a manager, that you can do with another co-manager is offer to have them report to you. I see people do this pretty often. there is no faster way, there's no faster career suicide than having conversations like that. If there are restructurings to be had, it'll come from someplace else. It's not, typically in your place to suggest that. And with peers, it's also important to remember that you need to have a great relationship with them, because tomorrow they might be asked to report to you. And if you have a bad relationship with them, trust me, they'll scuttle it before this even gets off the ground. On the other hand, it might also be the case tomorrow that you report to them. It's happened enough times in my career. And so essential, cordial relationships are a really important part of being in any company. And the final thing that I'll touch on with respect to these kinds of interpersonal relationships is how actually to be a good employee. All of us have love-hate relationships with our managers. We always want them to do more. We're like, they don't represent me fairly enough. They don't see all this brilliant future that I have to offer. My opportunities are limited. None of us ever pauses and thinks, I wonder what they're thinking. I wonder what kind of problems they have. I had this brilliant engineer called John Fitzpatrick in my team. And I always remembered that at every one-on-one, he would ask me, hey, Sridhar, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help you? And that stayed with me because he genuinely cared. Too often we have relationships where we just want, and we never put ourselves in the other person's spot and think about what is it, what are their fears, their insecurities, the things that they're worried about, how can we be helpful? Having that perspective builds a better relationship between you and your manager and makes many other things possible. Don't get me wrong, it's not always possible to be friends with your manager. That's hard. It comes with a whole bunch of other dynamics that are very tricky. But to see them as a person, to see that you can be, contributing in helpful ways to them is something that's important for you to remember. I want to end my talk with giving back. The thing, as I reflect on my career, the thing that stands out for me is the number of people that saw things in me that I had no way to see. All the way from my high school math teacher who pushed me to do more things, to my PhD thesis advisor, Paris, who was always telling me, Sridhar, you really need to work harder. I did not listen to him when I was doing a PhD. But he was generous with this advice. Or the many people at a place like Google. Jeff Huber, one of my early bosses at Google, or Alan Eustace, who used to head all of engineering at Google, or the legendary Bill Campbell. All of these people have spent many, many hours with me. And it's very clear to me in retrospect that they weren't really expecting anything back. They did it because they saw something in me that, as I said, I didn't see. They believed in me more than I did. And think about it. I run a team that makes $100 billion of revenue. I can confidently assure you, I have done nothing in my life that makes me worthy of this job. It's not possible. Like, what exactly do you do to prepare yourself for something like this? And yet, Larry and Sergey saw it fit to give me this opportunity. So my point overall is that all of us are where we are because of the opportunities that the world around us gives us. I know all of you have great aspirations for your careers, and I hope all of you do well. But I also need you to remember that you're already incredibly privileged, that you're part of an elite that happens to be, fortunately, honestly, not because of our doing, it just is happenstance. You're part of an industry that is growing, that has a bright future, that has a huge impact on humanity. The reason I say all of this is I think it is important that at different stages in your career and your life, you think about what do you need to do to contribute back. It can take many forms. I was a diversity sponsor at Google for several years. Susan Wojcicki took over from me recently. And it was eye-opening for me because I realized that the opportunities that I got, the opportunities that I took for granted, were not things that everybody got. Whether they were within Google or outside. Many people simply do not have the good fortune to get a great education and a great job in tech. And even if they make it, it's a lot harder for them. All of us love to cling on to this myth that tech is incredibly meritocratic, that like all the promotions are decided solely on the basis of merit. Nothing could be farther from the truth. All of us are a bundle of biases. You need to be conscious about them. And we also need to understand that people come with very different personalities and very different attitudes. So as a manager, for example, it's kind of your job to bring out everybody, to bring out that quiet person in the room. And find out more about them and perhaps give them an opportunity. It is your job to challenge people and help them achieve more. When it comes to a tricky topic like giving back, I've gone through many stages in my life where I'm just frozen in place. This just feels so hard that I don't know what to do. And that's a common problem that all of us have. I would encourage you, again, to think big but act small. If you're in a leadership position, simply being the mentor for a few people. I routinely meet many people every month, and I try my best to contribute. Giving people opportunities, taking a bet on people. Or if you're a hiring manager, perhaps having a Rooney Rule, where you actually make sure that you look at a pool of candidates as opposed to simply filling it up with people that you already know. You can contribute in many, many ways. I think this is really important that all of us think about doing it because we are the privileged. And it's important for us to be giving back and thinking about, how do we become more inclusive and how do we contribute back to the society that gives us so much. So with that, I thank you for your time and I hope you have a great conference. Thank you.